slide from what you sent me, so if you want to change anything, it won't be a big deal.
Okay, well, that's forgotten completely about.
Okay, then consider it
Yeah.
done.
Okay, so you want to talk a little bit about Saturday?
I need to get in on Zoom, so give me
Oh,
just a second.
Well, I'll let you all online see who
I was
are
gonna say
delightful.
Claudia's, said she'll be
Dawn.
here Thursday afternoon, Friday, so.
There's Brian.
Okay,
She can help as well, set up.
why don't, so before it gets too hot Friday, I'd say around 10, 9:30, 10, we could work for a couple hours to get the tents up.
Okay.
Normally, we don't like to put them up too soon
Yeah,
because of the wind,
yeah, I
it's
know.
windy and
Oh,
they're not built
That's
for.
fine. That's good.
And they're really bad if it rains.
Yeah, we had a nice rain at the house last night.
Yeah, we did too.
It was
Right. Oops. All right, just, I don't think I really need to do all that.
Oh, I thought that maybe there was some announcements or something
Not really.
about.
There's only a couple, Claudia's here, Kevin's here, and iPad 3. Hey, girl, looks like you're in Houston, you sneaky devil. I'm glad you didn't stay home to do the workday, because you probably heard by now that I canceled it because I got too frazzled, so you didn't miss a thing. But we do have plans for you on Friday, as you just heard. Not too bad, generally. It's more just, So yeah, I don't
Okay.
have.
Well, wait till you all see the shed that Kavita has been building.
So it's amazing.
It's incredible. It's incredible.
Sir has.
I've helped, but Kavita has figured out everything and from foundation on up, so it's pretty impressive.
On the
Still not done.
photos of all the builders that you can copy, it's like playing Mozart. Just keep listening. I wonder how they do that.
All right, so then what we're going to do is a little different for opening prayers. I want us to think about Shakyamuni Buddha, and just all we have to do is we don't even have to think, visualize Shakyamuni Buddha. Just imagine that there is this incredible enlightened being in front of you, in the space in front of you. And all this enlightened being wants to do is to help you, is to help each one of us overcome our delusions, our mistaken views, develop all of our good qualities so that we can attain the immeasurable joy of enlightenment for the benefit of all beings. And this is exactly what Shakyamuni Buddha did. And so his path that he followed is the path that he's presenting us to follow. So when we think about taking refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, Shakyamuni Buddha embodies all of that. He is the Buddha of this eon, the enlightened being of this eon. All of the Dharma that we have comes from him, comes from his knowledge and dissemination over 80,000 teachings that he gave, and then all of the lineage, the generations of lineage who so carefully preserved this down to our own teachers. So it's just an amazing thing to think all of that is embodied in Shakyamuni Buddha. So we don't have to be thinking of a whole lot of things here. Just that Shakyamuni embodies everything about refuge: compassion, wisdom, the Vajra, these powerful Vajra teachings that help us really transform our delusions and attain enlightenment. So the mantra, as I talked about last time, it uses the word muni and in 3 iterations. And muni is a Sanskrit term which means sage or saint. And it's the kind of sage or saint that knows the truth of existence not through reading religious texts or reading scientific texts, but through their own direct experience, own realization. And this is what Shakyamuni Buddha did. So the 3 munis you got here corresponds to the path that the Buddha presents to us. The first muni, it means control over all of the lower realms that we could take rebirth in. So that means control over all one's delusions and wrong views. So the second Muni has to do with liberation from cyclic existence, going all the way to a realization of emptiness that liberates us from being trapped in the suffering of cyclic existence. And the third Muni, which is Maha Muni, a great Muni, has to do with this direct realization of non-duality that leads directly to enlightenment. So when you hear those three Munis, it's the entire path. So imagine that he represents everything, every Buddha, every aspect of the Buddha, compassion, wisdom, power, all the lineage, and this path that we're on. So when we say Tayata Om Muni Muni Maha Muniye Swoha, this is our refuge. This is the entire path. Just imagine that this enlightened being, Buddha Shakyamuni, is right there, and all he wants to do is to guide us and help us. So this will be our opening prayers. Wait a minute. Let me see how many we'll do. We'll do. Tayata Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Swaha. 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 And then just imagine all this golden light coming towards you from the Buddha and reaching out to all sentient beings as well. So now let's just do our regular Sangye Chudang Sokti Chok Nam La 3 times in Tibet. Sangye Chudang Sokti Chok Nam La Jangchu Badu Dagni Kyapsu Shi Dagi Jenyen Gibe Sunam Ki Rola Penchir Sangye Drupardo Sangye Chudang Soki Chognam La Jangchu Bardu Dagni Kyapsu Shi Dagi Chenyen Gibe Sonam Ki Rola Penchir Sangye Duharsho Sangye Chudang Soki Chognam La Jangchu Bardu Dagni Kyapsu Shi Dagi Shenso Gipe Sonam Ki Rola Penchir Sangye Druparsho. Okay, so today we're actually going to get to Nagarjuna and refuting inherent existence. The Nagarjuna opens this section up directly talking about the five aggregates. So I want to do a quick review of that so we can understand how these five aggregates are connected to lack of inherent existence, a view of non-duality. So if you recall, there are five of these. The first is called form. Tradition is called form, and that has to do with physical form as well as any kinds of forms that stream into our consciousness, like say via sound or sight or smells or tastes or tactile sensations. They are all forms that are streaming into our consciousness. We also have the form of our body, the physical form of our body, and internal, external, like that. So that's all form. Then the way Kentrul Rinpoche, I like his particular sequence, so that what he follows it with is what normally would be called discrimination or perception. Yeah, perception. Normally they go form, feeling, but Kentrul Rinpoche goes form, discrimination, or form, perception. In other words, we have these streaming forms coming into our conscious awareness: sight, sound, smell, taste, touches. These are the what we call six consciousnesses. And so we discriminate what that is. We hear a particular sound frequency and we go, oh, that's my cell phone ringing, dinging. I know exactly what that is. Okay, so we based on that, we have a feeling about it. Now, say it's my cell phone, me. This is me, my feeling. I hear a ding. I have aversion. Because I'm not into all of that. I'm not into the phone and all of that stuff. Somebody else would go, oh, wow, who is it? I want to see, So the things, the feelings are going to be based on our own mental continuum that we have, based on whatever comes in, whatever sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, all based on our own mental continuum. So the next one, so in the sequence, then you have the form, you have the perception, you have the feeling. Uh, then you have what are called, they call them compositional factors sometimes, but Kentrul Rinpoche calls them mental formations. And this refers to our mental continuum, where we hold all of our habits, the mental imprints, the imprints of all our habitual actions of body, speech, and mind are there, which is why we have particular reactions to particular things that present themselves to us. Then the final one is consciousness, awareness. And this is referring to whether we have an awareness of everything that's been brought to our attention through the aggregates, whether that awareness is diluted, that we have the wrong view of it, which is what Nagarjuna is going to be talking about. We have a diluted view of it, and so our consciousness is mistaken about what we are picking up. In other words, the biggest mistake we make is that things actually exist the way they appear to us, and we think everything is that way, and it's actually not, as we will see. Or consciousness can be non-diluted, and so when all of these streaming information comes and we have the feelings and we look for mental formations and we rise, we have a reaction, we also have consciousness which sees it correctly. We can do that. It's just a matter of practice, habituation, habituating our mind to the correct view, which is what Buddha Shakyamuni is trying to show us. So that's just a brief introduction, so just remember that we were talking about that. So now we're going to go to we're back to Nagarjuna, and this is stanza 63. And here's what it says. How could the world exist in fact with a nature passed beyond the three times of past, present, and future, not going when disintegrating, not coming and not staying even for an instant. So let's break this down. According to Kensur Japatekchog's commentary in whatever book it was that we just, I don't have it. Oh yeah, it's this one. This is the book, if any of you have forgotten it. I wouldn't be surprised. Practical ethics and profound wisdom. So what Kensur Tekchog says is that in this stanza, Nagarjuna uses the term world when he says, how could the world exist in fact? He uses the term world in this verse to refer particularly to the 5 aggregates that are the basis of designation for the person. So, in other words, this set of aggregates, the form, perception, mental formations, feeling, consciousness, they're the basis of designation for what we call the person. In Buddhism, the person can be any being with a consciousness, any being with a consciousness and a mental continuum, and a being that has, what we say, a sentient being. So sentience refers to some kind of feeling other than just awareness, but there's a feeling that goes along with it. So the most basic sentience that exists is attraction towards something, attraction and attachment towards something, or aversion from something. And from that attachment, basic attachment or attraction and aversion arise all of the afflictive emotions that we know about: jealousy, anger, hatred, lust, craving. All of that arise from the basic attraction towards something and aversion towards something else. So everyone, Buddhism is talking about sentient beings, is talking about beings with the consciousness that have this basic attraction for something and aversion for something else. So this is where ethics arise. Ethics come out of this, because if a being has these kinds of emotions, then ethics comes into play, which means they have some kinds of feelings, which is so important. So when we're talking about the world as being the aggregates, we go back to how any of us experience what we call the world. We're only experiencing the world via our aggregates, via, the streaming forms that come into us, our consciousness, the feelings we have about it, we're pulling from our habits and projecting onto what's appearing to us all of the meanings that it has for us. So the world each one of us perceives is different. Kavita's world is different than the world I perceive. Don's world is different than the world Christopher perceives. Brian's world is different than the world Christopher or the rest of us perceive. Because we all have various habits and propensities that we carry with us. Yeah, go ahead.
Just a question, is it correct that when we talk about this Kavita or the Christopher or the Don,
Simply labels.
okay,
Yeah.
those labels are placed in dependence on the aggregates
Yes.
themselves. So you can't, Kavita is nothing more than the aggregates.
Right.
And the consciousness part of that is the aspect of the aggregates that's doing the labeling.
Yeah, mental consciousness is
The discrimination one.
Mhm.
Like, this is a Kavita. These aggregates, I recognize.
Venerable Robina goes even further. She says we're nothing but a bunch of habits. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. And we label what we are as, Don, Brian, Kavita, Christopher, Kevin. We just make those labels, but actually we're nothing but a bunch of habits. However, the problem lies in that we think that the world that appears to us actually exists the way it appears, and that science, has empirical evidence that that is so. Now, I want to bring up something that we don't normally think about. Let's go to another kind of sentient being. This is a sentient being that has, it has awareness, it has attraction towards something and it has aversion towards something else. And I'm talking about a mosquito. Now, a mosquito sees the world in a completely different way than we do. A mosquito does not have, for instance, a human brain has something like 86 billion neurons. A mosquito has 100,000, so it's a much smaller kind of brain. A human brain has a cerebral cortex, so you have these four lobes, and it has to do with our reasoning, our emotions, our ability to go through certain functions. I mean, like it's very, very complex, the human brain. The mosquito is much, much simpler than that. Basically, the mosquito has its aggregates, it has eyes, but its eyes there's like 1,000 lenses, and each lens picks up levels of light and dark. So the world that the mosquito sees is nothing but levels of light and dark. The other aggregates pick up odor, smells, and
That was all.
I think that's it.
That's all you were telling me earlier.
Yeah, I think it's just smell. So, and the reason the mosquito picks up smells is that they can smell the difference between an animal and they can tell if it's an animal or a human, and that there is blood there. Blood to be, they are carriers of blood, which is what the mosquito is after. The other thing that the eyes pick up is movement. So it's light, dark, and movement. So when there is, for the mosquito, it's going for the smell, right? And there's some movement that it sees, like somebody's going to go like that. Well, the mosquito is very quick, designed to see that very fast and flies away. This is why it's impossible almost to get a fly. But a mosquito, unless they've got their little nose there in you and they're getting the blood out, they're very difficult to get. So that's the world as it exists for a mosquito. And if a mosquito were to take its empirical evidence, which is its experience of what the world is, and any kinds of experimentations a mosquito might do regarding what the world is, all it would come up with is, well, this is variations of light and dark and some odors. Now we think in our high level of intelligence that the world we see, the world of the earth and the trees and the plants and the biosphere and the cosmos and the stars and the galaxies and the suns and all of that, we think that's the way the world appears. And we believe we have empirical evidence for that. But all we actually have is what our particular sets of aggregates are allowing us to perceive. If we take into consideration even that it's possible that there could be beings that exist that are at much, much higher levels than we are at, much higher levels of consciousness, much higher levels of perception, concentration, say like an enlightened being, they do not see, they're not limited to seeing the world the way we see it. And their empirical evidence is based on something much different than what we. Now we just have to think about that. That there could be other beings out there, not even Buddhists, just say there are other, we might call them aliens, who have a far more sophisticated set of aggregates than humans do, and see a completely different kind of world, see us in a completely different way than we see one another and see ourselves. That has to be taken in as a possibility. And I believe right now, current science is dabbling with that. So when Nagarjuna is saying, how could the world exist in fact? How could it actually exist in fact when there are so many different ways that it can be perceived? What's the actual reality out there? And that's where he opens it. And it's a little mind-blowing. I mean, it's not the way we normally think about reality.
So I guess if everybody has their own reality, then what is
Well, like
reality?
among humans,
Yeah.
we do have a conventional reality that we will agree upon. We will all say, for instance, all of our functions are working properly, that this is a yellow cover for this, cell phone. We'd say this is a cell phone. It has a yellow cover, right?
I think Brian's asking about the underlying pervasive reality.
Yes, but I'm starting with conventional reality. We have a conventional agreement about what this thing is, what a cup is, what a table is, its function. After that, it's completely personal. It's completely personal whether you like yellow or don't like yellow based on your mental formations and your, mind stream, whether you like that kind of table, whether you like this kind of house, whether you like this weather, whether you like Texas or hate Texas. Some people won't even step foot in Texas because they hate it so much. They think it's so evil. And I can't even understand it.
I think the building blocks question, what is the underlying, on a cosmic level, not about even just our world.
All right, underline all of it is the most subtle level of consciousness that exists. And that is called the clear light mind. That's the most subtle level of consciousness.
But I guess my thinking here, you use the word empirical as so.
Right, it's sort of like proof, right?
Well, I guess the question is, what is proof? What is truth? What are facts? What is real? What is not real? I mean, at the end of the day, we can have a convention that says that's an iPhone cover. Okay,
Right.
everybody kind of says that's an iPhone cover, but there's a lot of other things that people say that our human species doesn't agree on. So, and everybody says it because they have their own reality. And so you have to say, well, okay, I need to, live a life, or I need to make decisions about what to do, and what is the decision I should be making, or the right decision I'd be making, or how do I know? And it's a circular argument that has been going on for 5 years in my mind about, how do I know that what the Buddha teaches or what the Buddha has said, or, that's his perception.
Right.
That's his, view and his habituations and all that. Could be right. And we say, study it, makes sense, maybe it makes sense, okay, that's okay, makes sense to you, but to somebody else who's a Catholic or a Christian, it makes it completely no sense at all, or they believe in a God, which, we think is really not correct. I mean, but who knows who's right and who's wrong?
Well, all we can do is listen to what the Buddha taught and use our own judgment and our own logic based on that. But we have to have a very open mind to move beyond appearances and to actually listen to what the Buddha is saying. So, in other words, what the Buddha is saying is the nature of existence, the nature of reality, is that it does not inherently exist at all. It doesn't have an inherent existence.
I understand what the Buddhist says, I get it.
But you're saying, is that true?
Well, yeah, I just take, vaccines, right, for example.
Mhm.
We say vaccines are good. Guy who's the head of HSS now says vaccines are not good. I mean, it's not like there's a lot of subtlety there. It's like, on the one side, you should do it, on the other side, don't do it, take vitamin A or vitamin D or whatever.
You yourself have talked about, and perhaps you would exclude vaccines from the discussion of the placebo effect. I don't know, but you've talked yourself about the phenomena of the placebo effect, and I think there's some data out there about the longevity of this. I think it's Okinawa. They live so long because they're such busy bodies, and they want to know what's going to happen, and because basically their level of gossip and social interaction is so high that they can't bear to leave this planet.
I'll live to be 120.
Anyway, I wonder if there's some pathway thinking. I realize it doesn't apply entirely to every question, but in effect, since our existence is subjective, the placebo effect may be a doorway to analyze other types of arising, uh, dependent arisings, and like how does that kind of, because what we're talking about, roughly speaking, with the placebo effect is the interplay of consciousness with what seems to be an exterior, an external form of some sort. So then we're talking about how does consciousness affect the appearing form? And could it literally be the case that for Joe Schmo, X is true, and for Josephina Schmoet, or whatever, that Y is actually true? And so for one person, say take the vaccine question, vitamin A or vitamin D will protect you from COVID better than the COVID vaccine. And as you know, both camps have all the data in the world to back up their claim.
Well, I guess it's
I
a,
think with vaccines, I think there are lots of questions where there isn't a clear answer. Like vaccines is a good example. It depends on the individual, how they evaluate their risk. If they're more afraid of the side effects, which are really rare, then they may not take a vaccine. They're not taking into account that vaccines also protect the whole population. So I don't think, I mean, there are just too many different factors people can include in making their decision. So if you have something that has multiple dimensions, you're not going to get an agreement on it, even if the data is very clear. Vaccines protect you, protect the population, and they have some side effects which are minor compared to the protection. That's what we say, and somebody else just says, oh my God, I'm so scared of the side effects, I'm just not going to take it. I'll risk the disease.
I think something that I want to just point this out, that there are a lot of people who differentiate, they don't categorize vaccines as one monolithic phenomena. In other words, some vaccines you'll see, they go, yeah, I want this or that vaccine, but I don't, I mean, they're not all the same. So I think there's also there's different camps in terms of
well,
being more.
maybe vaccines is not good. Let's take another example.
Let's take another example.
So take penicillin. So we know that if you have a particular kind of infection, penicillin can treat that infection and treat it successfully, right? So I would say that's a known fact. That is a truth. And I would imagine most people agree with that truth, maybe not everybody. But if at the same time, the reality that everyone sees is their own reality, how do you know that that reality, that penicillin is good to treat bacteria X, is correct versus, maybe we see this as our reality and it's not really a correct fact. And that gets me to, what do you know is I don't know, what do you know is factual, what do you know is correct if in fact everybody has their own reality, and while we have some conventional agreements, but as I see our society, we have less and less conventional agreement around lots of different things. And I say, okay, I mean, so I just want to know who's
That
the,
may actually end up being a good thing for a practitioner, but
Um,
I mean, abstractly speaking, you could say all of it is merely the arising of the consciousness and its interplay with.
mhm. Now,
So-
given your you mentioned the placebo effect
yeah.
before.
Yeah.
Could you just explain that and why is that so? What's going on there?
Well, I think that the mind is convinced that either A, you're getting something of benefit, so you think you're better when you get it, or even when you tell somebody they're getting a placebo, sometimes they feel better. So the placebo effect, I think, is really a mind-based effect. It's a little bit hard to understand why if somebody gets a placebo, they think that should make them better. But if you give them a placebo and don't tell them it's a placebo, then you can clearly say the mind is what's driving their feeling that they're getting some benefit.
So there is some level, in other words, of proof that the there is an effect, a placebo effect, especially if somebody doesn't know that it's placebo. They take it thinking it
They
is
don't
going to
know
benefit them.
when you do a trial. And
Yeah, and in
you
a
have to
trial,
go
and
for
then
it.
it works for them.
It works for some of them,
Right.
yes.
So that does
It
say
work for-
something.
It doesn't work for others.
Right.
So it's
It
not
does say
universal.
something
And
about
vice
the
versa.
power of the
Medication works for some, it doesn't work for others.
Penicillin works pretty well.
Well,
for-
penicillin's not a good example. Well,
Right.
Well, that's a good example.
It is
I
a
guess
good
my only struggle, and it's ongoing struggle, is, and again, it's not that I don't obviously strongly believe in Buddhist philosophy, but my ongoing struggle is that I just always feel like if we all have our own reality and we all live our own little world, and my reality is different than your reality, that just leads to how do we know anything about anything anymore?
that's probably a good
Right.
question.
I mean, I think what Nagarjuna is pointing to here is there is a reality. There is a reality, the nature of existence that is real and true, but we're confused about it.
Well, the reality in Nagarjuna and Buddhist way is that there's nothing, the reality is that there's nothing that exists independently.
Right, and that's very easy to say those words.
Yeah, no,
Conceptually.
I just said it.
But it's not easy to have that experience,
Right,
which is
right.
what the Buddhist teachings are aimed at, bringing us to a direct experience of that. So I think it's worth giving Nagarjuna a listen. You know,
That's fine.
and
I'm just trying to decide how
Yeah.
how to know if he's right or not.
well, the only way to do it is
And
to
then you go back to, well, you have to have experiential,
Mhm.
what do you call it?
we have to put what he's saying into some kind of practice.
Right, but given that you just brought up the placebo, where we know that the placebo effect is real, which means we're not giving you real medicine, but you think you're benefiting from it. So now we say you're experiencing this, what you think is emptiness, and somehow that experience has convinced you, or you convince yourself that experience leads you to believe that there is nothing that exists independent. It's the same question, you know. I mean,
You could say it's the same question. However, the placebo effect actually points to the power of the mind. The
right,
power of the
but
mind.
The mind is
So this is what Buddha is saying. It's the power of the mind.
right. I get it. It's the mind that is dictates
Right.
or a conscious.
And so you're asking, how do you know if the mind is right or wrong?
Yeah.
Well,
And
how?
maybe you say it doesn't matter if it's right or wrong, but I'm saying, well, you know, if it's wrong, then you make a decision.
I think right or wrong perhaps is well, you could put it in terms of right or wrong. You could also put things in terms of what works and what doesn't work. What causes happiness and what doesn't cause
Yeah,
happiness.
earlier today, Christopher and I were talking about the basic point of Buddhist practice. Why is there a Buddhism? And it's can be reduced down to merely to provide people with tools so that they can enjoy their existence, that they can enjoy their existence.
I'm listening. I've got.
That's the only point of
That
Buddhism.
they can enjoy their existence.
To be happy,
To be happy.
satisfied,
Right.
to be calm.
Well, okay.
That is the
Let's
point
say
of
I
Buddhist
believe in God
practice.
for the same reason. It makes me happy.
And right, and so the promise of Buddhism is that once you do the process, you don't have to revert back to struggle and unhappiness. That's the only difference.
Okay. Probably
But
that.
it's not just that I am happy, it's also that other people are happy. And so that's where the ethics system comes in.
Exactly.
I mean, there are the rules, and they're pretty universal across other religions too. There's certain things you just don't do because they don't work in a society. And so my take is, I want to make other people happy. I mean, then realizing that everything dependent means whatever I do affects other people. So I better do things that don't hurt other people.
Right, exactly. And so that actually is the flip side of what it means that there is no independent self-existence, but there is an interdependent existence. There is a dependent co-arising kind of existence, which is why why ethics works. This is why ethics works. If we do things that make others happy, it's going to make the whole system more happy. It's going to make us more happy. If we're doing things that are very destructive to others, we're not going to be happy, and they're certainly not going to be happy. If you look at somebody who's a very, very, what you might consider very destructive, we could almost even say evil person, and just pick whoever your example is for your own self. But when you think about that person, would you say that they're really, really happy? Do they seem like very happy, loving people? Or you could actually take
They
love.
may be happy, but that they don't cause any happiness. So, I mean, I think there are people, reasonably evil people who are quite enjoying themselves.
Well, it's a kind of a selfish enjoyment.
Right.
I don't think
But they
that,
don't make other people happy necessarily.
yeah,
So
and I don't,
that's what I think falls apart.
right. And I don't see that, it's hard to see that there's any kind of real joy there. It's just, it's just more and more, just wanting more and more and more and more for oneself, more and more power, more control. I don't know. It seems kind of intense to me, but I suppose they could call it happy. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I remember there was a whole movie done. It was called the Happy Movie, I think. And what they found that the people who were the most happy, who basically it didn't matter how much they had or how much power or control they had. What mattered is what their interrelationships were like with others. And that made them, those were the happiest people that they found in the world when they went around the world. So that, of course, that could just be confirmation bias. Maybe the movie makers were looking for that particular outcome, and so those are the only people they interviewed, right? Phew, hell. So let's go on here. The term when Nagarjuna is using the word world, it is also including what we would call outer phenomena, such as the environment that are not associated with the person. So when we think of, the outer environment, everything that's not associated with the person also is referring to, we could think of it as the world. This is because the aggregates, our particular aggregates, do not arise, remain, or disintegrate from their own side, independent of all other factors in the environment. For example, if the aggregate of consciousness existed inherently, if consciousness existed inherently, it could not interact with other factors and it wouldn't be able to change. An inherently existent consciousness or mind would be frozen in time and remain unchanging throughout the past, present, and future. So now Nagarjuna is getting a little more specific about what we're talking about here. When we're talking about inherent existence, it means something that actually, because it exists inherently, it cannot be affected by anything else. It cannot change. It actually can't even function. But this is not the way we usually think. We just say the words, oh yeah, that's independent self-existence, blah, 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 as opposed to interdependent. Well, what does that actually mean? An independent self-existence means nothing can affect it. Nothing can change it. And as we look around, we'll see there is nothing at all that's like that. Everything we see can interact, it can arise, it can grow, it can decay, it can deteriorate, it changes. It changes. And that means that it is not inherently existing. So it's important to understand what inherent existence means and what it doesn't mean. Then I think we get a clearer idea of what the Buddha is trying to say or get at when the Buddha is saying there is refuting inherent existence.
Yeah.
Impossible to interact or change if something exists inherently. And we know that's not the case. We couldn't even be doing this right now if we existed inherently. We could not connect with one another. We couldn't even sit in a chair and feel it. So
Well,
that's something to think about. And we would be frozen, like he says, through the three times: the past, present, and future would not be able to change. Nothing, no interaction. He might as well be dead.
Well, if nothing is able to change an emotion, there would be no existence.
No existence. Yeah, that's even different than being dead. Dead is just a transformation. No existence whatsoever is what what inherent existence is pointing at. No existence whatsoever. No experience at all. No change. Now, it's important to understand that's what the Buddha is saying. We may have a different idea of what inherent existence means, but we have to understand what the Buddha means, how it's being defined by the Buddha. Okay. When the aggregates of form, perception, feeling, mental formations, and consciousness arise, and we've just talked about those aggregates don't arise unchanged from somewhere else. When they cease, they don't go somewhere else unchanged. And in the moment after they arise, they don't continue unchanged. For example, our body is not a permanent phenomenon that exists fully formed in the previous moment and comes into the next moment without changing. Instead, our bodies change every moment, never remaining the same. Now we can sort of understand that something's going on because we realize over the years our bodies have changed. Our skin's different, our hair's different, our body, but we don't see the momentary change. It just sort of creeps up on us. One day we look in the mirror and go, God, where did that spot come from? Just like happened. This is the way everything is. Everything is momentarily changing. Nothing is stuck or frozen the way it appears to us. This is why we have such trouble. Everything appears to us as if it does exist independently and separately and not connected. And so it actually takes analysis for us to see how everything actually is connected to everything else, including our consciousness. Because without our consciousness, none of this would appear to us. None of it.
Well, without consciousness, we would not.
Without consciousness, there is no experience, in other words. Whatsoever, no experience. Without consciousness, there is no experience. That's what consciousness is. It's awareness. It's awareness, experience. It is the experiencer of the universe. If there is no consciousness, there's no universe to be experienced. I suppose somebody could try to deny that, but I don't know how they could. I don't know how they could. That's to me, that's logic. That's logic. The aggregates don't have a fixed nature that exists independently in either the past, the present, or the future. The aggregates have an impermanent nature that passes beyond the limits of inherent existence in all of the three times, past, present, and future. Things with such an impermanent nature depend on causes and conditions, and therefore don't exist independently or inherently. Phenomena that depend on conditions don't remain unchanged for even an instant. They change as they are arising and are beyond remaining the same in any of the three times. Does that make some kind of sense? Okay. Now he's going to talk about the three times. The present is posited in relation to the past and future. In other words, there is no present as such if you don't compare it to the past and compare it to the the future. It relates. It is, what do they call it? Mutually dependent. The three times are mutually dependent on each other, so they don't exist independently or inherently. An action can't inherently exist in the future because that action is yet to come. It can't inherently exist in the past because it has already ceased. So far, you can kind of go, all right. And it can't inherently exist in the ever-present now because the ever-present now cannot be pinpointed. It can't be found. It is like such a moment to moment to moment is so fast that before you can even think about it, something's in the past already, something's in the future, and there's a present, but there it goes. So it's really all we actually really experience is an ever-present now, and we bring the past, our habits of the past, and our hopes for the future. That's all in our mental continuum, and we bring that continually into the ever-present now. We do this with relationships from the past. The book that you've been reading that Amina gave me. What we do is we pull. If we have relationships in the past that were not that were problematic, and we couldn't figure out, like as children, how to deal with it. Well, we carry that as a habitual way of relating in our mental continuum and continually bring it into the present moment. And we are responding and reacting in our relationships the way we habitually learned how to do it. The thing is that we have to do is recognize that and create new habits. That it's like Marina says, we're nothing but a bunch of habits. What the Buddha is saying is you can create new habits. You can purify old habits. That's all purification is. It's purifying these old problematic habits and replacing them with beneficial new habits that become very strong. That's what purification is talking about. It's not some kind of magic wash your sins away. It's something we actually do ourselves with a lot of guidance and help. So let me read that particular, this was all about that one stanza. So here's that stanza again. How could the world, which is either the five aggregates or the external world that appears to the five aggregates, how could the world exist in fact with a nature passed beyond the three times of past, present, and future, not going when disintegrating, not coming, and not staying even for an instant? So now he's going to get into the answer of why. How come? But that was just what we just read was describing what that particular stanza was talking about. Here's stanza 64. Because the coming, going, and staying of the world and nirvana do not exist as their own reality. Because of that, what difference is there, in fact, between the two? So when he's talking about the world here, he uses the world again. But in this case, Kensler Tetchog is saying, he's referring to cyclic existence now when he says the world. This continual cycle of existence that we see everywhere, all around us, all the time. Just on this planet alone, we see cyclic existence constantly. Cyclic existence is the nature of, in a lifetime, we see the cyclic existence. It is the nature of things in this samsara, in cyclic existence, to cycle around, right? So, because the coming, going, and staying of cyclic existence and nirvana. Now, nirvana means the cessation of this cyclic existence. Nirvana means stopping, a cessation. And what it's referring to is the stopping of the suffering that arises because of this cyclic existence and our wrong or mistaken conceptions of the nature of who we are and the nature of reality, the truth of existence. So, I'll read it again. Because the coming, going, and staying of cyclic existence and nirvana do not exist as their own reality, some kind of own independent reality, what difference then is there, in fact, between cyclic existence and nirvana? What difference is there between the two? According to Kensur Tekchog, in this verse, the world refers to cyclic existence. Cyclic existence and nirvana do not inherently come into existence or inherently go out of existence. They also don't remain inherently existent. At the ultimate level, there is no difference between nirvana and cyclic existence in terms of their both being empty of inherent existence. It's the same thing we've been talking about. If cyclic existence inherently existed, it would be frozen. Nothing could occur. Not even suffering could occur. Nothing could occur. Same with nirvana. If nirvana inherently existed, then you're either in it or you're not, and you'd be in it frozen forever. But it doesn't exist that way. It is a dependent arising. The cessation, in other words, the cessation of suffering occurs because of causes and conditions. It doesn't just exist as some nirvana out there that we're going to arrive in and go, I've reached nirvana. It is something we are actually going to generate causes and conditions in order for it to happen. Same with cyclic existence. Cyclic existence doesn't exist as some inherent thing or place. It exists as a state of mind that arises due to causes and conditions and grasping at an inherently existing me and not understanding even what that means. And so suffering arises. We make mistakes all the time. We just don't understand what it is we're doing. What the Buddha is trying to do, and I know it doesn't seem like it because the Buddha is trying to clarify what it is we're doing, what it is we've been doing that's mistaken, and what it is that we can do that will be beneficial. But we are so immersed in a wrong conception of how things actually exist. We need help. We need somebody to actually help us, to guide us. And that's what the Buddha and all the teachers that follow all the entire lineage, that's what they're doing. They're guiding us in a direction that we can go that's going to lead us out of unhappiness, lead us out of suffering, lead us out of frustration, lead us into a much better, loving, interconnected existence with one another. And the proof in the pudding, like whether it's right or wrong, will be is if that's what we are experiencing with one another. If we're experiencing that with one another, if we're experiencing love and happiness and connection with everything and everybody, we'll know, wow, Buddhism works. They're right. It's correct. The Buddha is correct. If we don't experience that and we do everything the Buddha says to the T, and it's going, this isn't correct. I'm still miserable. Then for us, we would have to say, it must not be correct. And that's how we make that judgment, Brian. That's how we decide whether it's correct or incorrect. What is our own experience of connection and happiness and love with one another? Is it getting better or is it getting worse because of Buddhism? Now, what I will say, Rabina does sometimes, she said this, and other teachers will say this. When you first begin to actually look at your mind in meditation, you'll start to think, oh my God, things are getting worse. Because what we're doing is we're beginning to notice exactly what we're doing. The way we think, how we are projecting onto everything and everybody our own stuff. Our own stuff. And initially, it will seem like things are getting a little disrupted, discombobulated, because we're pulling ourselves out of what we call a comfort zone, which is actually a suffering zone that we feel comfortable in. In addition, cyclic existence and nirvana are posited in relation to each other. Again, they're mutually dependent. Cyclic existence is the continuation of suffering, and nirvana is the cessation of suffering. But nirvana can't exist as the cessation of suffering unless there's suffering to be ceased. You know, and suffering will just be continual, and there would be no hope of ever getting out of suffering if there wasn't a cessation to suffering. So those two are mutually dependent. Being mutually dependent, cyclic existence and nirvana don't exist independently or inherently. In this way, they are also equal in terms of being empty of inherent existence. Now, does that make sense?
Say it again.
Now, did you understand the reason why cyclic
Yeah,
existence
yes,
and nirvana are mutually
Yeah.
dependent? Okay.
Yeah.
Being mutually dependent, they don't exist independently or inherently. In this way, they are also equal in terms of being empty of inherent existence.
Fine.
Yeah. Okay. Some might think that being equal in terms of being empty of inherent existence means that samsara and nirvana are exactly the same. That if samsara is already nirvana, there's no need to practice ethical conduct or control one's craving and grasping at objects as if they existed inherently. However, as we know from our experience, if we act out of this belief, we'll create a lot of destructive actions for ourselves because we'll be ignoring the law of karma and its effects. And if we teach this wrong view to others, we'll lead them into a thicket of suffering. You know, and this is going on a lot. This happens a lot in cyclic existence. You will have what we would call leaders who are saying, this is the way it is, folks. This is so, and you follow me, and I'll lead you, and I'll protect you, and I'll save you. And we can see this has never happened throughout history. It never happened. And it's not happening now. It never happened. It never happens in cyclic existence, and it's not happening now. We can easily see that. Our own experience shows us that. And if we have any relationships that are actually really good and really loving and really beneficial, we will have to recognize that we are doing something that is other-centered in that relationship. We are not seeing that relationship as, what can I get out of them to make me feel better? It's more like, what can we do together? How do we dependently co-arise together in this relationship for some kind of benefit? Not only to ourselves, but to us and to everyone else. That's when relationships really start taking off to being really good relationships. If you want a good relationship in your life, that's what you shouldn't be looking to get. What can I get from this person? I need what they have. Because that's not actually going to bring about a good relationship. It's going to bring about a needy relationship.
Mm.
Okay. Is that all right? The correct way.
I just remembering I guess it's Shanti Deva, if you want to be happy, all causes of suffering come from trying to make yourself happy, and all causes of happiness come from
Trying to make others happy. Yeah.
this sort of,
This is again recognizing, if we go back to when we talked about the five aggregates and how mental consciousness arises from the five aggregates and our actions. When we begin to understand that everything that appears to our consciousness, we are giving it all the meaning that it has for us based on our mental continuum and all our habits. If we actually recognize that, then we'll see the huge benefit to ourselves in being beneficial, to being a benefit to everything that appears to us, because we are being, it's appearing to us through our aggregates. This goes back to this idea of non-duality, the non-dual nature of subject and object, or self and other. We are connected to other. It is not a dualistic relationship. So the final moment before, it is said, the final moment before a Buddha actually becomes a Buddha is complete enlightenment. There is that total realization of non-duality. It's not simply a realization of emptiness, emptiness of inherent existence, but it is the realization of non-duality between self and other. That's what makes a Buddha. What liberates you from cyclic existence is a direct realization of the empty nature of things, that nothing has an independent, inherent nature. So there are levels, there are stages and levels of this path to enlightenment. Okay, now he's going to go into a new, where are we? He's going to go into a new way of refuting inherent existence. So that was called refuting the inherent existence of coming and going, coming into existence and going out of existence.
Time, past, present, future.
Mhm. Now he's refuting the inherent existence of something being produced, staying, or remaining, and then ceasing. So here's stanza 65. If due to the non-existence of staying, production, and cessation, if due to the non-existence of staying, remaining, production and cessation do not exist as their own reality, what difference is there in fact between the two? And like all of these stanzas, you just go, what? So let's see what Kensur Tepchat says. Now Nagarjuna refutes the inherent existence of three attributes of impermanent phenomena. Their production, like coming into existence or being produced, their staying or remaining, and then their cessation. So we would say everything, we think of it in terms of happening in three chunks. So for instance, say this piece of paper came into production, and we generally know the idea, paper comes from trees and all that stuff, and they produce it and they do all this milling and they do all this stuff. And then, then they have the type that was all put on there. That was produced, right? And we know with something like a piece of paper, it's going to sort of remain for a period of time. And then we know it will decay and it will cease. So we think of it in three chunks: being produced, remaining, and ceasing. We usually think of these three attributes as occurring in sequence. First, something is produced or arises, then it stays or remains, and finally it ceases. But in actuality, these three occur at the same time in one object. Production is a new dependent arising of what didn't exist before. Production is a new dependent arising of what didn't exist before. So there was just a huge amount of production in just the things that I just said. Staying is the uninterrupted existence of a previous continuum. Staying is the uninterrupted existence of a previous continuum, and cessation is a thing's not lasting for a second moment after it arises. So we think big chunks, and what he's saying is continually, constantly arising, coming into production, remaining, ceasing. It's just constantly doing this, changing, shifting, every moment. We don't see it, we don't recognize it, but we see the effects of it later on. But we don't see the moment to moment to moment to moment to moment how it happens. But it happens somehow. It doesn't just overnight. Overnight, all of a sudden, we're not old with gray hair and bad skin. It happened moment to moment to moment to moment to moment from the time we were born. We can use the example of a sprout to illustrate how this works. If production existed independently from its own side, then the object that is produced, a sprout, would not need to depend on any other factors such as causes. Again, if production existed independently from its own side, then a sprout would not need any other causes and conditions in order to be a sprout, to come into that production of a sprout. Not depending on anything else, the sprout would be permanent and unable to change. So the staying and cessation of the sprout couldn't occur. It wouldn't occur if it inherently existed. An inherently existing sprout would be frozen in time and space, unable to function. In this verse, Nagarjuna is focusing on the attribute of staying or remaining, saying that since staying does not inherently exist, neither do production or cessation. If the sprout inherently existed in a state of staying or remaining, what that means is it could never have been produced. It would always have been there. Likewise, if the sprout inherently existed in a state of staying or remaining, it could never cease because it couldn't change from moment to moment. The sprout would be unrelated to its cause and effect. So that is pretty straight ahead, makes sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
What I don't think we get, I don't think we understand because we don't actually see it, is that every single moment, this is always changing continually. It's never, ever the same. So what this is pointing to for us is if we keep playing the same old record of our habits, our particular reactions, our thoughts, and we don't make a change, that's what it's just going to continue to play over and over and over. We will just keep doing it, recycling through it, repeating it, and we won't see any progress. We won't see the kind of transformation we want to see. So we have to, moment to moment to moment, begin to change our habitual way of thinking, of speaking, and of behaving. And the only way we can do that is to train ourselves to do that, to generate the habits to do that. This is the same thing as going on a diet. Nobody's going to lose weight if they keep doing the same thing they've been doing. They will continue to either gain weight or maybe stay at the same weight. But if they really want to lose weight, as everybody knows, you have to make some changes on a regular, habitual, daily basis. And then the changes will occur. This is the same with our happiness and our state of mind. We have to make changes. We can't expect that something out there, some person, some relationship, some being, some food, some, you name it, house, car, whatever, trip, that is going to make us happy. That's not going to make us happy. Changing our habits of body, speech, and mind is the thing that's going to actually cause that transformation to occur. In a sense, it's actually quite simple if we understand it. If we understand it, it's quite simple. But the problem is we don't understand it because we see everything exists inherently the way it appears to us. Therefore, we grasp at it. And we think we need it and we think we want it in order to be happy.
I think something else for me becomes an obstacle, and that is that the familiarity of the society that I live within and all of its conventions feel like the quote real world. So, people, places, and things and events that are part of our shared conventional storyline and history and appearing world. It feels like so there.
Oh, and we all reinforce it with one another. We
Right.
say, this
This is how it is.
is how it
You
is.
still have to pay the mortgage.
Of course we do.
And-
Right.
Yeah, and
Right.
that's kind of what you're saying.
That
It's
is what I'm
like,
saying.
You
Yeah.
can work on yourself and all this.
Now I
but
can't tell I can't tell if you mean this. Yeah, you still have to pay the mortgage. That itself is within the convention.
Yeah.
So it's not like you really do have to pay the mortgage, because so what?
You have a
got a
choice,
warehouse.
and you could be home. I mean, I'm saying it's a positive.
It's like
thing.
it's all
It's part of why you do this, so that you're not being thrown into the
Right.
to the clinker. It's like you still have to deal with
Right.
these things that are, I don't know, would that be your conventional reality or systems that we live in
Right.
that we still have to follow?
that's all
Exactly. And so you find a mortgage that you can live with.
Yeah,
And you
yeah,
pay.
but I
and
didn't
you
mean
have
that as a negative thing. And
Right.
let's pay the mortgage. But then that's why I do this. It's because then you leave this lovely place that I'm living in, and I go out on the street, and it's like, oh, I still have to deal with these people.
Well, I mean, in Buddhism, they say if we're serious about this path, we have to take some time, some alone time with our mind to work on it. If we're constantly being distracted by everything going on, and we're generating distractions for ourselves because we think those distractions are going to make us happy, we're barking up the wrong tree. We have to take some time to analyze, how am I behaving? How am I speaking? How am I actually thinking? And the thinking is the most important because everything else follows from our mind. And we really have to spend some time on that, some serious time. Meditation time is what Buddhism would call it. But it means thinking. I mean, meditation basically means thinking about what we're doing with our life. And using the guidance of what an enlightened being has given us as saying, if you don't want suffering, I'm here to guide you. I'll help you. I'll be your guide. I can't wave a wand and do it for you, but I have done it myself, and I will guide you in the ways to do this. And we can hem and haw, and we can say, well, how do I know if it's right? How can I trust it? All we can do is get a sense that, this seems pretty good. I haven't seen anything really horrible coming out of Buddhism yet, so I think I will give it a try and see if some changes, transformations occur within myself. And this is all any of us can do. And if we find that some positive transformations are occurring because of the practices that are laid out or the guidance laid out by the Buddha, then we can develop some confidence that the other practices that the Buddha is guiding us in will probably be of benefit too. And we can give that a try, but we do not have to buy a hook, line, and sinker. Not at all. It is totally up to us. One of Venerable Rinpoche's favorite terms is, you're the boss. You decide, not somebody else. You're the boss. And so we just have to figure that out for ourselves. Okay, we can still have some more here. Okay. The correct way to understand the equality of samsara and nirvana is to know that both of them lack inherent existence and are established nominally. They're mere labels in mutual dependence on each other. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
All right, samsara is a label for continual suffering. Nirvana is a label for the cessation of that continual suffering. They are mutually dependent, and they only exist as samsara and nirvana as these labels. Even continual suffering is a label. Cessation of suffering is a label. It's the experience of suffering, what we call suffering. That's not a label. That's an actual experience.
Wait. That is suffering. Suffering as such is nothing other than experience, and nirvana is nothing other than
Right,
the
exactly.
cessation of that experience. So there is no bifurcation between the experience of suffering and suffering. That's what suffering is.
Right. But I think it's important that we understand it's an experience. And that the name is a mere label for the experience.
Where I'm thinking again is that we tend to bifurcate like us, like I'm somehow different than the suffering, when in fact I'm a consciousness. There's no being and then suffering.
Right. Suffering does not inherently exist out
It's
there.
not out there.
Samsara is not an
It's
inherently
not-
existing out there place. Right. Yeah. It takes a lot because we're really.
One of the things that seems so profound and radical is that in essence they're pointing towards just this momentary unfolding of a state of existence that is completely up for grabs moment by moment based on whatever our habit is.
Right.
And that's kind of freaky.
And the Buddha is saying we can direct that. We can either unconsciously direct it and generate suffering for ourselves and probably others too who we're interconnected with, or we can take some reins, some control, great control, muni muni maha muni, and we can generate the causes and conditions that are going to stop the suffering and be beneficial. It's, we're going to do one or the other. We're either going to be heading towards just flatlining, suffering, or, being a benefit. And most of us don't flatline. We're either going to be going towards causing problems for ourselves and others, or beginning to cause benefit for ourselves and others. And it's just up to us. What do we want to do? What makes us happy? All right. So the correct way to understand the equality of samsara and nirvana is to know that both of them lack inherent existence and are established nominally in mutual dependence on each other. Since they both lack inherent existence and are therefore dependently arising entities, it is important to practice the path to overcome the suffering of samsara and attain the peace of nirvana. That makes sense? Okay. All right, can still go a little more.
So I'm thinking a little bit about Brian's earlier question in relation to this point. It gets a little bit outer spacey or impractical in a way to talk about the abstract nature of reality. And so when we ask a question, what is true, are we by definition asking questions from within conventional reality that in an abstract sense are irrelevant in the purely ultimate nature of things? In other words, the discussion about how do I decide what political viewpoint is true and valid? That's only a question, and many of the questions, the examples that my understanding is the examples that Brian's been raising are only relevant within conventional reality as human beings in a structure that we're familiar with. That there's an ultimate reality that's completely fluid, that's once you experience that, these other
Mm.
conversations become irrelevant.
Right. I think once, I think the Buddhist teachings would say that once you have experienced ultimate reality, actually, I had a direct experience of ultimate reality, then when you see conventional reality, you can see it for what it is. You're not tricked or fooled into thinking that is the way things are. You see underlying the conventional reality, the empty nature of it. And really, it just becomes all about when you're talking about when things, things do not inherently exist, what that means is things interdependently exist. And in order for interdependent existence to thrive, it requires benefit. We have to raise all of the parts that are dependently arising into a beneficial system, not a divisive, warring, I hate you, I love you system.
Back to the big question of reality, they use the saying that Buddhism is a vehicle to cross the sea of samsara. And somewhere I remember reading or hearing it said aloud that when you cross to enlightenment, when you have crossed the sea of samsara and have achieved cessation of samsara, you then, you don't practice Buddhism anymore. You have actualized the path, is another term, in the sense that ship that you've crossed the sea of samsara with, you get off it and you're,
Mhm. You can, I mean, there are levels. Again, there are stages and levels. You can be
well, I'm talking about ultimate.
ultimately you're talking about
Buddhahood.
enlightenment.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm talking about full
Yeah.
enlightenment.
yeah. But you can also reach like what they call an arhat, where they're out of samsara, but they have not yet
Yeah. Well,
thought
still in
about being
all,
enlightened.
they're still in all there.
Yeah, they're out of the suffering. Their
I mean, I
particular
think in a way it helps, it is somewhat helpful to have these relatively granular discussions about our shared conventional experience of how things are. I think it's kind of in a way good to the best of our consciousness's ability, bring in the ultimate nature of things, almost like, the Prasangikas would, because it sort of, in a way, diffuses some of the, for me anyway, some of the angst about.
Sure. Yeah. It also can diffuse our anger, our being triggered, by our, habitual responses. If we begin to try and bring the Dharma into everything, try and look at the ultimate view to the best of our ability you see conventional existence, but understand underlying that, there is no inherent existence there. It is dependently arising, dependently co-arising. And we have a lot to do with it. Our response, the way we see it, the way we respond to it. It's huge. We can either get really angry and pissed off and join everybody else and get really angry and pissed off and then let's have a war, and cause a lot of suffering and destruction, or work in the opposite direction. Based on the logic of interdependence. Because if it's just a pie in the sky idea, dream feels good, and there's no logic behind it, then it doesn't have a firm foundation. Buddha is very clear. You have to have a very firm foundation to begin this path. If you do not, you're going to go astray. You got to bring your old habits right into the Buddhist path and go in a different direction. That's not what the Buddha was intending. So we have to really look at all of these teachings and take them on board to the best of our ability, even if it seems like code. All right, we're done. So let's do the closing prayers. You know what? Let's just, I'm going to do this one, unless you can just listen. All right, again, imagine Shakyamuni Buddha is in the space in front of you, and the message coming from him is one of incredible love, compassion, and wisdom. And the message is, if you do not want to suffer, I am here to guide you. Okay, so just imagine that. And think we're addressing this to the Buddha. Please bless our mind streams. May all wrong thoughts which hinder progress on the path to enlightenment cease for myself and all other sentient beings. May we easily develop in our mind stream every sort of right thought which helps us to progress on the path. And finally, please bless us so that all external and internal hindrances to realizations on the path to enlightenment are completely pacified. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. And then next,
No, you're not gonna have class.
I don't think we'll have class
Yeah.
Sunday because of the event on Saturday, Tracy's celebration of life. Yeah, so there won't be a class on Sunday. Okay.
Thank you, Christopher.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. And hope to see many of you on Saturday. Ooh, what's that? Hold on. I'm going to stop.